the growth from 1,800 acres to 150,000 acres, well, it wasn't a straight line, I'll tell you that. There were ebbs and flows throughout the way. What?
This week, we are talking all things growing a cover crop seed business with Joe Gardiner, who is the co-founder of Covers & Co. The Modern Acre is the podcast for builders in agriculture that think differently. If you'd like to dig deeper with The Modern Acre, check out our membership community, The Modern Acre Co-op.
The Modern Acre is presented by Corteva Agriscience. Corteva Agriscience combines industry-leading innovations, high-touch customer engagement, and operational execution to profitably deliver solutions for the world's most pressing agricultural needs. Corteva generates advantage market preference through its unique distribution strategy, together with its balanced and globally diverse mix of seed, crop protection, and digital products and services. With some of the most recognized brands in agriculture and a technology pipeline well-positioned to drive growth, the company is committed to maximizing productivity for farmers while working with stakeholders throughout the food system as it fulfills its promise to enrich the lives of those who produce and those who consume, ensuring progress for generations to come.
We are super excited to partner with Corteva Agriscience this quarter as the presenting sponsor of the Modern Acre. Huge shout out to the team there. Corteva's everywhere, Tim, and they're a major player in food and ag, and so super excited to partner with them. They also are leaning into biologicals, which is just really exciting. So super happy to partner with them. Thanks again, Corteva. If you don't know them, be sure to check the link in the show notes. So Tim, this episode with Joe, Covers & Co., this is just like the quintessential Modern Acre podcast interview. Like it is a story of entrepreneurship, of grit, of building a business in regenerative. It is so awesome. He's so passionate about it. He got me fired up talking to him.
I know, it's such a fun conversation and cool to see a business really lean into content and education as kind of a pipeline to develop their strategy. They spend a lot of time doing webinars and really educating folks in the industry on like what it takes to integrate cover crops in your operation and why that matters. So that was really cool to see how they've used content as a way to grow their business.
You guys are going to love it. Let's jump in with what's top of mind for Joe.
Well, your guests can't see me, but you guys can. If I'm looking a little bit tired, it's because I had a bit of a project on the go this summer. So our company Covers & Co. sponsored an event to raise money for our local Clearwater Foundation. So my business partner Trav and I both call the community of Clearwater home. It's just, I'm totally biased, but the most special place on earth, filled with just wonderful people that believe in a vision of something bigger than themselves. A ton of community support and volunteers we get. So this summer, my summer student and I built a replica of The Field of Dreams, the Kevin Costner movie. So I read a quote online a couple weeks before the event. It said, we didn't do it because it was easy. We did it because we thought it was going to be easy. And that sums up our project perfectly. We thought, we're going to spread some grass seed and sow some corn around it and have a baseball game. But it ended up being a significant project, invested a ton of hours and sleepless nights, but we were really fortunate. Mother Nature I said to Jace all summer long, Mother Nature wants this project to happen, Jace. The weather's going to be fine. We just had the perfect growing season. We got an amazing catch of grass, a wonderful catch of not just corn. We were doing it as a bit of a promotion for our corn intercrop, which is a long season forage soybeans. It's just, I've never seen a crop so beautiful, and it just happened to be a baseball field in the middle of it. So we had 3 baseball teams from, I know your audience is in the United States, but from the province of Manitoba. Province is just the same as the state. So we had 3 all-star teams. It comprised the best baseball players in all of Manitoba. We ended up having, we didn't get a hard count because it's tough to get a hard count when you're standing in a cornfield, but somewhere between 600 and 800 people out to the event. The weather was perfect. The volunteers were amazing. We were able to gather sponsorship money to support the event that went towards the Clearwater Foundation. We were able to raise 60 or just shy of $60,000 for our local foundation, which I just love the concept of the idea. It's so important for these rural communities to have income coming in year on year to support some of the local infrastructure, the projects that are going on. As the population decreases, there becomes a greater need for some of these funds. So it was just start to finish. I am exhausted, but start to finish, we couldn't have asked it to go better.
I had a feeling that was going to be your answer. We had spoken, I think, a month or so back, and you were like in the middle of it. Like you were like getting all ready, and you just had it a few weeks ago. So cool. I think such a savvy move, and I just love obviously the community piece of it, but then being able to showcase, the corn around the field. But it's not your typical corn, right? It's how Covers & Co. does corn and thinks about it. And I'm like, why aren't more people doing, like, Tim, something that just came to mind was like pumpkin patches, right? And like corn mazes. And like there's some of these things that there's an opportunity to demonstrate, what are we in? We're in a corn maze right now. How could this be different? So my mind was going about how you could kind of incorporate that concept into other areas. But I think, Joe, you talked about how if you knew it was going to be that hard, you might have rethought some things. I think the CEO and founder of NVIDIA just had a quote about that same thing of like, if, as a founder, if you knew how hard it would be to start and scale a company, most probably wouldn't be able to stomach it. And that brings us to your story, right? Like the Field of Dreams is probably a microcosm of the history of Covers & Co. Right. So tell us, Joe, let's go back. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of how you got into all this.
Sure. So I'll go right back to the start, you guys, if that's cool. So my story is pretty similar to just about everyone that's in this space. I grew up on a family farm. I got 4 siblings. My mom and dad raised all 5 of us on 6 quarters of land. My mom did not have an off-farm job till later. How in God's name they did that, I just rack my brain at. But it was a different time in agriculture. When I graduated high school, I got the hell out of there. I couldn't think of a place I would want to be less than that, and the stress involved with that farm. So I went and took my diploma in agriculture. I had no idea what I wanted to do, just like every other 18-year-old. But I needed a summer job, and there was some land available for rent. This was in 2007. Well, it just so happened I won the agricultural lottery because I was renting land for $15 an acre and selling canola for $15 a bushel. It was just, you couldn't have timed it any better. I'm obviously very grateful for the timing. It got me interested and involved in agriculture. I went back to university, got my degree in ag biz, which I will just keep my mouth shut on. We don't have enough time to dive into that one. But when I was finished, I came back to the farm full time. We were conventionally farming. Commodities were great. Land was cheap. Inputs were cheap. It was confusing to me why my dad was broke his whole life because I had a full bank account. Well, you do that and stay in that mindset for 5 or 6 years, and eventually land prices catch up to you. Commodity prices were depressed. Machinery, fuel, you name it, fertilizer was getting to the point where we were growing good crops and there was no money left at the end. So I actually had I call it a quarter life crisis. I went and worked off farm as a swine nutritionist for a feed company that worked in conventional hog operations. Boy, that was humbling because I sure didn't enjoy that either. And I found I was just doing 2 things really poorly. I had a professor in university he was an organics professor that had opened my eyes to the importance of rotations, carbon to nitrogen, intercropping. These were all, if I didn't take that one course, these are all things that never would have been taught to me in an agricultural degree. Is the soil's alive, the plants are alive, and it's a symbiotic relationship. So I'm forever grateful to Martin Entz at the University of Manitoba. He's not there anymore, but I just want to give him a shout out because we don't realize the people that make changes in our lives. So that was about 2014. I quit my job. I came back to the farm full time. And basically I said to my dad, listen, we were going to go broke anyway, doing what we were doing. I said, I would rather go broke, putting the emphasis on management rather than putting the emphasis on an operating line and passing it over to nutrient at the end of the year. So about, I would say 2016, 2017, we basically converted the farm to what we didn't know at the time, but was regenerative. And basically it was, how can we maximize sunlight capture and how can we utilize each acre more efficiently? Because we can't afford to buy land. We had a mixed grain and cattle operation. How do we get the livestock onto the land more often, not just from a soil health perspective, but to make better use of the plants that we're growing and the land that we have. So in 2018, I was going to every single soil health conference, YouTube videos, books, white papers. I was completely addicted. And thank God that I was. And Gabe Brown, who most of your listeners I'm sure have heard of, is just a 3-hour drive from where I sit in southern Manitoba. So a couple trips to Gabe Brown's farm. Hey, if Gabe Brown can make it work where he lives, where they get half the rainfall and worse topsoil, damn it, we can make it work on our farm.
When you went to Gabe's farm, what did you learn? What did you see that was different?
So the funny thing was, the first time I went to Gabe's farm was in 2008 when fertilizer prices went nuts. And there was a guy in the States that we didn't know anything, just that he wasn't using fertilizer. So we went down, toured the farm. Amazing day. I wish I was able to take in more information and had less of the blinders on, but we literally came home from that day and said to ourselves, well, sure, it can work there, but I don't think it would work 3 hours, like 100 miles from Gabe's place. I don't know if it'll work there. It wasn't until we had a few years of the sting where it pulled the blinders off. And the next visit was, it changed my life. Seeing plants growing together, seeing crops, intercrops, the amount of plant biomass that was there with no synthetic fertilizer at all. You guys, you got to remember, I came from conventional agriculture university. No one taught us that this was something that was possible. We were taught the uptake removal charts and the nitrogen conversion, all these wonderful things, but nobody said, hey, the soil's alive and there's everything that we need to grow a plant is either in the atmosphere or in the soil. So Gabe's farm at that time, they were doing more grain farming. So he was the one that got me interested in corn intercropping, because some of the intercrops that I saw on his farm, same exact conditions as what we had. And he was able to add another revenue stream to it, which we also had, which was grazing livestock on it. So yeah, Gabe Brown's farm in the early days, I'm just blessed with my geography and my timeline in life that I was able to get there, because it was the like minds of the like minds. The people that showed up to those tours, the amount of information that you could get just wasn't available to anyone at the time. So in 2018, Gabe Brown, I was on his farm. I saw what he called a full season cover crop, and I thought, I have to try this. So in 2018, I came home and picked my shittiest piece of land that I could. And a good friend of mine at the time, his name was Travis Avery. He's now my business partner and co-founder of Covers & Co. We went to university together. He was representing a soil test lab. So we soil tested this land. There was nothing there. I mixed some 8 different species together. I didn't have an ID on the rate, nothing. There was nowhere to get this information. Both Trav and I agreed this is going to be a complete wreck. We put the seeds out there, and thank God we did. It changed our lives. It changed our trajectory in life, and the people and doors that it opened up was amazing. That crop never went to bed without me out there. Every single day, not just the healthiness of the plants without fertilizer. And we saw the soil test. There was nothing there. We didn't know what was going on, but every day it got more plant biomass, more diversity, more insects. For the first time in my farming career, I heard a field and I could feel a field, the energy that was going on. It was just amazing. And that was 2018. We did a couple different years of testing and backgrounding from a soil testing perspective. We did follow-up trials after a full season cover crop was grazed, the effect that it had on the incumbent crop. And in 2020, we finally got the confidence. We incorporated March 7th, 2020. March 15th, 2020, we were in lockdowns and scared shitless that our company wasn't going to get off the ground. And from there, we started our first year, I think we put out 60 ton worth of cover crop seed, which was about 1,800 acres. We tapped every single soil healther on the shoulder and said, hey, we're starting up this company. Here's our vision. Here's what we want to do. And God bless those people for putting faith in us, because we went from 1,800 acres in 2020 to this spring, we'll be just shy of 150,000 acres of diverse cover crops across Western Canada.
What an incredible story. And I'm so excited to dig deeper on this. Let's maybe level set here. Talk to us about like a full season cover crop versus an off season cover crop. I think Tim and I were in the world of an off season cover crop, but maybe explain like what is a full season cover crop and yeah, what impact does it have?
Yeah, and that's for the people that are just getting into this world, they hear cover crop and cover crop's the same. A fall seeded cover crop, which is what we call the off season cover crop in our climate, in my experience, just 96% of a plant is sunlight and water. And if you're going to grow a wheat crop and then plant a high diverse cover crop in Manitoba in the end of September, you just can't count on that much as far as sunlight capture and water. So the idea of a full season cover crop is we plant high diverse crops. So our most popular one is our full season cover crop. It's a mix of cool season plants, warm season plants. We really try and be purposeful and thoughtful with sunlight capture. So making sure that the plants that, like a C4 grass like sorghum, can grow up in the canopy, capture all the sunlight that it wants, but we keep the population low enough so sunlight can infiltrate into the canopy, and then we purposefully use species that have less of a sunlight need to then capture sunlight throughout the canopy. So what we're trying to achieve with the diversity is the production of root exudates. Each plant in vegetation produces a root exudate that stimulates new and diverse biology. So in a monocrop, that is true. In a forest, that's true. In a full season cover crop, that is especially true. But when we add the diversity in, what we do is attract diversity of biology. And if we have a diversity of biology and we tick the box as far as what they need for supplementation and a healthy soil ecosystem, what we're finding is we can capture all of the minerals that we need, either nitrogen, the oxygen, the carbon from the atmosphere, and everything else we need is available in the soil. So what that does is 5% of our customer base, they use cover crops for winter forage for livestock. So that crop grows to the middle to end of July. It is then harvested. That above ground biomass is used for winter forage for livestock. And then the regrowth, what happens is our producers generally are turning livestock out on that land. So we're ticking every single box as far as the principles of Mother Nature go, with plant diversity, minimal disturbance, and animal integration.
Super interesting stuff. I've never kind of chatted through in detail a full season cover crop and what that looks like. I guess in your context, this is replacing kind of a grain crop or corn or soy, and you would basically have the full season cover crop. Like, does this translate to other geographies? Like in California, if you're a grower, like, is the idea that you would kind of take a field and do a full season cover and that would replace kind of a lower value contract? How do you think about kind of like the financial impact of integrating something like this?
You guys, we are in interesting times. I'll tell you that, because for 5 years, our core customer base was cattle producers or mixed grain and cattle producers across Western Canada. And over the last 5 years, those producers have gotten broker, and there's been fewer of them because the commodity cattle market has been so poor, and we have to compete with land acres on the grain side when everything has been record high. What has happened this year is that's been flipped on its head. So in years past, it has been really, really tough to convince farms that, hey, we're going to dedicate a whole year to soil health, to stimulating soil biology. The best use for a cover crop, if our goals are soil function and soil improvement, is to get the livestock and intensively graze that. Return all those minerals back to the soil, stimulate that biology so it has the ability to keep and maintain stable soil aggregates. If we can maintain stable soil aggregates, there ain't a fertilizer in the world that's going to help that or make that soil more productive, because that biology has everything necessary for life. It's got pore space so air can infiltrate water, nitrogen. It can access the minerals that it needs. So what's interesting about this year, we'll see what the effect it has on it. But these marginal acres that we're trying to produce commodity crops up in Canada, they ain't profitable. They probably weren't profitable last year. And this year, you're looking, if you're going to put a full rate of inputs into, say, soy or corn or canola, you're looking at $600 an acre and you're never going to get that back. So what has happened is, because winter forage is now valuable, these marginal acres now, the best, most profitable option for those acres is actually soil health. It's let's minimize cost and risk in year one. Yes, we're not going to get rich grazing livestock, but what it does is we infiltrate water. We've reduced the fertilizer needs for the following growing season. We've stimulated the biology, so we have access to more minerals that are in the soil. It is an exciting time for somebody like me that's lived through high commodity prices or grown a business through high commodity prices. And now we can see that our option is actually the most profitable option. And it just happens to be the best option for Mother Earth as well, and our farms.
No, I mean, it's super fascinating. It's something that like we've played around with, right, on our farm, is cover crops, yes, but also like this idea of, can you know, we did like a pastured poultry trial for like a year and a half, right? And the idea that we had at the time was, hey, if we take a field and do kind of a pastured poultry grazing on that field for a year, we kind of like supercharge the soil. And then the next year we could rotate out of that and, you know, do that pastured poultry grazing on another field and then go into the original field with a crop. And the idea was that the soil would be kind of supercharged, right? We didn't quite get there for more like logistical challenges, but like it makes sense, right? If you can kind of have as part of your rotation, as part of your portfolio, like we have, you know, a dozen crops that we grow every year and we're constantly rotating. Can you add in a full season cover crop and livestock integration into that rotation? That's really compelling, you know, philosophically to me. But the execution, right? That's what's important.
I'll tell you guys just and of course, anecdotal story, but I get really frustrated with universities telling me my research is anecdotal and they're growing research plots on one small plot for 5 years replicated. But let me tell you a story from my farm when we were just researching, hey, does this have a viable place in the marketplace? So we grew a full season cover crop. We intensively grazed it. The regrowth came back. We intensively grazed it again. That soil test was showing nothing. Virtually no difference between when we started and after. And most people would say, okay, well, that's not a success, right? And no soluble nutrients are showing up on a soil test. We took that same land and went and sowed oats. We did a pre-seed burn off. We sowed oat seed and that was it. Not a single fertilizer application, fungicide, nothing. And we had a soil test showing five parts per million nitrogen. Those oats ran 104 bushels to the acre, which was the identical yield, average oat yield across my farm with a full synthetic, conventional program. So now does that yield the most return in 2019? No, because it pays the most to grow two crops. Does that budget make sense in 2024 when oats are now under $4? Yeah, it makes all the sense in the world. You eliminate the risk, you add another revenue stream, and yes, your gross output is going to be less, but you're going to be more profitable, and that is the name of the game.
Joe, I want to dig into the business a little bit more. You started it right at the start of COVID in early 2020. You're 4 years in and you see just tremendous growth. Maybe just talk to us about how you've been able to do that in such a short time frame. I think in agriculture, a lot of like ag tech and companies are just like, oh, it's super slow because it's seasonal and like year over year, it's hard to iterate. Like you've been very successful to grow quickly. Maybe just talk to us about that growth.
Well, it didn't come panic attack free. There were years where that was the norm than the exception. Yeah, it's been crazy, you guys. I mean, first and foremost, I got to give a shout out to my business partner and our team here. We when we started, we thought we were insecure business entrepreneurs is what we were. And we thought we needed professionals to help us along and because they're smart, we're dumb, we don't know anything. It took 2 or 3 years to realize this, but we don't need people with letters behind their names. We don't need people that have had existing businesses. What we need is people that care and share our vision because I mean, our Alberta territory manager came from the oil field. Our Saskatchewan territory manager came from environmental services. Our Manitoba territory manager was a mixed grain and cattle farm. From a education standpoint, their backgrounds couldn't be more different. If you get people that are vision aligned and care, they'll learn anything. They'll go to war with you. It's not just a job, it's their life, and they're doing something that they can believe in. And that trickles right down to our dealer network right across the prairies. We just have assembled an amazing team of like-minded people. And fortunately, that's something we realized earlier than later, that was the path forward. The growth from 1,800 acres to 150,000 acres, well, it wasn't a straight line, I'll tell you that. There were ebbs and flows throughout the way. I mean, the biggest thing I wouldn't say the biggest thing. The toughest thing for our business model is we get one time of the year to sell. We get springtime in Canada. So all of our sales come within a few month window, and we spend 10 months trying to source our cost of goods, be out there, market, educate, and having no idea. Well, our forecasting models are getting a little bit better as our dealers have more experience, but 10 months of the year grinding, hoping that when that selling season comes, that we're going to be well prepared for what we find. In some years, 4 of our 5 growing seasons, we've basically completely run out of seed, and which creates problems, of course. And one of those years we overbought inventory, and that creates a whole nother issue with the startup company. So we don't call them problems anymore. We truly call them learning opportunities, because with the negative things, I guess, or the unforeseen things that have been real challenges, we've grown from them, learned from them, assess risk better, and figure out how the hell we can avoid that situation altogether. But yeah, it has been learning opportunities. The biggest one for us is cash flow, because our product is very expensive to purchase. Once it's blended, that's the only use for it unless you want to hold on to it for another year. Definitely challenges, but hey, this is a great business to be in, you guys. We're not, people's lives aren't on the line. We're growing seeds, and we're preaching what Mother Nature has done on planet Earth for 400 million years. The logistical side is a bit of a headache, but no business is easy. If it was easy, you wouldn't have a business.
Man, I could go so many different places with this, but great stuff. I think I'm going to go to, you mentioned kind of like the supply chain logistics operations piece of this. I was a little surprised when we were looking at doing cover crops on our farm in Central Valley of California, big ag mecca, right? Like when we said, hey, we want to do an off-season cover crop, where do we source that? No one had a great answer, which was kind of shocking to me, just given all of the, tailwinds of regen, all the talk of cover crops. And we, had a few consultants we were working with of like, hey, where can we source this? And our source was in the Midwest, which is, kind of blew my mind a little bit, because I'm like, hey, there's tons of seed companies, right, around us and near us. Like, why isn't this a thing? Talk to us a little bit about the market dynamic and how the logistics and operations work.
So the problem we wanted to solve first was, well, one, I was a farmer myself trying to source high diverse cover crops. Nightmare. Absolute nightmare. The amount of miles I put on to go grab 2 bags of, daikon radish or whatever. I knew that was a problem that producers would like. Was one, we got to cross the threshold of it's got to be more profitable than the other option. And the second was it has to be easier. If we check the 2 boxes, more profitable and easier, there's a successful business model to be had here. But the other thing that we did differently, which was a frustration for both myself and Trav, my business partner, was the education. There was a massive gap between what producers were asking for and what information was out there for these producers to latch onto. And I was a firsthand experience on the concept doesn't always match up to what reality is. And we need more people growing this stuff and telling these stories, what to look out for, what not to look out for. So I give my business partner, Trav, all the credit in the world, because Trav we had, this is a true story, you guys. We had $15,000 in our bank account, and Trav took 7 of it and spent it on a brand style guide. And I thought, you are insane. That's half of our money. What are you doing? But we created a brand based on education, not sales. We don't need a sales pitch. The sales pitch is, this is the oldest idea on planet Earth. Mother Nature, this is her path. She doesn't grow things from a monocrop standpoint. What our sales is we need to educate producers and make a resource for producers that if they want to learn about cover crops and plant diversity, fantastic. If they want to learn about mycorrhizal fungi, carbon and nitrogen, intercropping, localized weather patterns changing, we need to have a spot for them to gather all the resources that we've gathered over the last 10, 15 years, and it's got to be put in one spot. So we just attach our brand to education and the promotion of not, we promote our competitors, because the more people that are talking about cover crops is the more normalized it becomes in the industry space. And as long as we're the leaders on education, more interest in this space will mean that we have a stable business for a long, long time to come. Now, from a logistics standpoint, it has been a learning opportunity. Boy, that's for sure. We've gone the import seed from Europe. Obviously, we import a lot of seed from the United States. Trying to keep plants vegetative means sourcing seed from climates where it's a longer growing season. So that was all part of in the early days, we were doing the seed sourcing, we were doing the blending, we were doing the logistics, the warehousing, AR, you name it. Trav and I wore every single hat. Fortunately, we're to a place now where we've got just some really good people in place to help us from a logistical side. And boy, that sure makes the highways to growth seem a lot more digestible.
Awesome stuff. Just wanted to circle back to the education piece. I think that's so critical and so needed in the space where, like, I think every farmer is aware of cover crops, but not really sure how to implement them on their farm. Every farm is so unique with the crops they grow, the region, the climate, so many variables. It's not just this like one for one, like, oh, here's the cover crop mix and this is what you do. Like every cover crop is different on every farm. And so like by you guys really focusing there, I think it's super important and admirable. Like you're doing the bi-weekly webinars every other week to kind of educate and get folks basically being able to ask questions and be in a safe space to kind of really understand how that fits in. So I think that's a really critical piece of your operation and one of the reasons why you've been so successful. I want to talk to you about kind of the path ahead. You've obviously had a lot of growth the past couple of years. Maybe talk to us about how you're thinking about growing and expanding the business, or you're going to come down and support us down in California. What's the next couple of years look like for Covers & Co.?
Great question, you guys. So all good plans don't necessarily come to fruition. We are planning a decent amount of growth again this year. Currently, we are staying in Canada. So, we've just been blessed. We've hired 3 new territory managers in the last year. We've hired logistics people. We're looking at bringing on 2 more. We've actually, we used to outsource third party all of our blending and seed sourcing. We brought it back in-house so we can source from our producers, our dealers, and keep our business as local as possible. It also just gives us more control in the supply chain. So that was an important step that we needed to take in the business, and trying to grow and expand as well. So our plan is essentially get through this year, make sure that we've got our vertical integration plan executed as best that we can, that we, any unforeseen issues, we can deal with it. And we're not trying to deal with 100% growth like we have in the past, and these new processes and procedures. And managing cash flow, of course, you don't even, I'm not a money person, but if you don't have any money, you ain't running a business. So managing cash flow is just something that obviously is a huge priority for any business that's in our state that's growing. Once that is in place, the possibilities are exciting. I've spent 4 years of my life living and breathing in operations, making sure that seed gets out and we get paid and we're getting good price on things, hiring good people and bringing vision aligned people that we trust to share the message of plant diversity and cover crops. What it's allowed Trav and I to do is look above the operational side of things and look back at the vision of why we were here and so excited about this movement is because, hey, I don't mean to offend anyone that's listening or podcast listeners. If we're talking about solar panels, if we're talking about electric cars, if we're talking about reusable plastic water bottles, we're missing the severity of the issues that we have in our ecosystems and our food production model. The answer is the soil, always. The deeper you dive, the more the answer becomes we need to heal our soil and our ecosystems. And agriculture is the biggest manager of land on planet Earth. And we need to create a production model that is more in tune with Mother Nature, or Mother Nature bats last. She'll swat us like the mosquitoes that we are and move on to something else. We need it. We don't have another option. I mean, I was saying this on a tour just last week. I think it's the UN, or I forget the governing body. They're talking 40 crops left, 40 crops of topsoil. You know what? Every single breaking news, the 6:00 news should be opening with, we have 40 crops left of topsoil. That's our lifetime, you guys. Like that. Why that isn't the focus of everyone everywhere? That's where life begins. And we call it dirt and let it blow away and injected with all the fungicides, all the insecticides in the name of productivity. We need to have believers and young people and guys like you guys and me that are out there normalizing this stuff that it's the most important thing that we'll do on planet Earth is take care of our soil. And it has to be a priority going forward.
Oh man. Well, I'm ready to run through a wall. So, that's awesome. And I think you guys have an amazing mission helping enable all of that. Right. And I think even how you're thinking about growth is really thoughtful. And I think that's really important, especially for a bootstrapped company, right? It's like, we don't want to get over our skis. We want to be thoughtful. We want to make sure we grow in a sustainable way. So super cool to hear from that. All right. We're going to wrap up with a fun one. I'm very curious your take here. What's your ag hot take?
Okay, you guys might have to cut me here.
We will not.
I was on one of my tours at Gabe Brown's farm. I was a conventional farm that was dipping my toe in, and somebody asked him this exact question. But Gabe Brown said, "We need to abolish or farms need to voluntarily get out of crop insurance." Crop insurance in the United States, it's different than Canada, I know, but I'll speak on what I know only. And crop insurance is 2/3 subsidized by the Canadian taxpayer. And the entire system is set up on yield. You get a better crop insurance rate if you grow more yield. If you grow more yield, your floor comes up. The entire system is set up not on profitability, not on ecosystem services, not on the health or longevity of our soil, just yield. If you're a new farmer that wants to get a bank loan, you know what the first thing they ask you for? Where's your crop insurance? If you want to get access interest-free money from the government, first thing they ask you for, where's your crop insurance numbers? How do we get off the hamster wheel if we don't take a serious look at our insurance programs, what they are incentivizing? I'm forgetting his name, Charlie something, Warren Buffett's right-hand man. He said, tell me the incentive, I'll tell you the outcome. Well, what we're incentivizing is yield, 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 no matter what. Has anyone even asked if we need yield? 5 billion bushels, 40% of the American corn crop goes to car fuel. In Canada, we're predicting 50% of our acres to a monocrop brassica canola when our soil is already giving us warning signs. It can't handle it with clubroot. We're producing all that for hydrogenated vegetable canola oil and aeroplane fuel. What are we doing here? It just doesn't make any sense. If we keep incentivizing yield from a systematic standpoint, you guys, you can have the most successful podcast on planet Earth. I can be filling rooms with 30,000 people. It won't make any difference unless fundamentally we change the risk profile for these farms and stop having them focus on yield. because if you want rural depopulation to stop, if you want soil degradation to stop, we're incentivizing the wrong thing. We're never once does crop insurance ask me, how profitable is your farm or your operation? They want to know my yield. They didn't ask the revenue streams that came off, because my corn crop, I get 2 revenue streams. I get to sell the corn and I get to graze the livestock, and the soybeans produce fertilizer. Wouldn't that be helpful information for an insurance program to know that I'm not a burden on society and just capturing subsidies? I actually just created more wealth because I have revenue streams. I now understand what Gabe Brown was saying, that I don't know if there can be a soil health movement, real change, and crop insurance as we know it cohabitating. I just don't think it's a possibility.
Man, I 100% agree with you. I think it's an area that Ty and I need to do a deep dive on, probably on a later podcast, just getting into kind of USDA, FSA, all these programs of subsidies and insurance. And like, is it really actually helping farmers? Like, it just has gotten so overwhelming and bureaucratic that I think it's lost its original intent for a lot of these different programs. So super good hot take, Joe. It's been an awesome conversation. As we wrap up, how can our listeners get in touch and connect with you and Covers & Co.?
So check out our website. If you are soil health curious at all, we put a ton of energy and resources into the website for that exact, just to appease 25-year-old Joe that couldn't find anything anywhere. If you want to learn about, of course, all the blends that we have to offer, the producers that we work with, we're just absolutely blessed. We have the brightest and most intelligent minds that are willingly telling us information, not for themselves, but for the betterment of others. There's information on how to access funding, carbon to nitrogen ratios, mycorrhizal fungi, any of the influencers in the soil health world. We promote their content. So you can get lost in the website for days and days and days, and please go back and revisit it. The goal with the website is to take some complex chemistry and biology and add pictures and storytelling to help with the education process of understanding what is going on here. So we really just try and simplify complex issues with storytelling so farms understand more easy.
So, Tim, what'd you think?
Super fun conversation with Joe. Love everything that they're doing and their focus on the market that they operate, just really trying to dominate that market, really get excited customer base to kind of grow there before getting ahead of their skis and trying to be all things to all people. Of just like, we asked him like, oh, can you do something in California? He's like, maybe guys, but like, I need to really focus on the business here at home to like get in a position to go expand globally. So I think that's really, really admirable for the company.
It's becoming a common theme on the podcast, right? Is this hyper focus, and they're definitely leaning into that as well. Well, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We appreciate it. We'll be back next week with another fresh episode.